Hi, welcome to Weather and Forecasting, Module 12, Human Effect on the Atmosphere. So we're going to be talking about how we have directly altered our atmosphere. And the first one will be through primary pollution and then secondary pollution. Air pollution being any gas, liquid, or solid air particulate that has entered the atmosphere that can adversely affect plant or animal that is man-made, specifically as its entry. Primary pollution are pollutions that are emitted directly, and they are either by natural or anthropogenic man-made processes. And secondary pollutions are pollutions that arise from chemical reactions in atmospheric gas with gases emitted by natural or anthropogenic processes. For example, the chlorofluorocarbons entering the upper parts of the atmosphere and breaking down the ozone layer, which causes a chloroxide, would be a secondary pollutant. We did not expect that pollutant to arise. It arose due to a different process that then caused the secondary process to occur. Basically, where is it coming from? Carbon monoxide is mostly caused or mostly added to the atmosphere through highway vehicles. There is a 25% miscellaneous, which can include pretty much everything else that you can think of, including industrial agriculture, for example. Engines that are not on roadways account for 8.8%. Fuel combustion is 7.6%, and then industrial itself is 5.6% in its set. Volatile organic compounds. These are the solid particulates that are man-made compounds that we put into various products and things to do things like keep it from coagulating or becoming solid, for example. These volatile organic compounds, which are not naturally occurring, even though they sound very naturally occurring, it's because they have a carbon backbone within their structure. They are mostly caused by industrial processes. There is miscellaneous, which is a lot of times industrial processes product that we've produced that allows for it. For example, you can now buy paint that is low VOC or no VOC paint, but most paints are volatile organic compound ridden. So there's a lot of it, for example. Transportation, and then fuel combustion in other forms. Nitrous oxide. Big one is transportation again. Industrial, commercial, and residential causes a lot of nitrous oxide. Electrical utilities, and then another cause of nitrous oxide, which miscellaneous has in its category, is agriculture. Like how we raise living things for meat consumption, for example, is a big proponent or contributor to nitrous oxide. Sulfur dioxide is mostly electrical processes. So it's the electrical plants producing electricity, puts out a lot of sulfur dioxide. And anybody who's lived near an electrical processing plant, someplace that produces electricity, specifically ones that are like oil or natural gas based, you will know that smell from that plant. And it's the sulfur dioxide, right? Sulfur has that stinky egg smell. Another one is in industrial or commercial facilities. And once again, they're burning the fuel for heat. And this fuel that they're using is very sulfur ridden because it's not processed the same way as, for example, fuel oil that we would use for home heating oil or for gasoline, or processes for gasoline. Because if we're going all the way back to the modules where we kind of briefly talked about different processes of fuel, we have different types of fuel that can be refined, and this falls into those categories of refining. Vehicle and road engines does produce some of it, and then there's other. And then there's a PM 2.5 particulate matter. These are the slightly small solid particles that we can find in things like dust or fuel fire. They are solids, and they're also the ones that we get concerned with lung tissue and safety with things like lung tissue, like coal miner black lung, for example. This is the solid particulates that are in there. We don't want them getting into the human body, so that we'll do things like wear masks which isn't popular in the United States, in our country. But if you go out in Asia, like for example in China, people wear masks, and it's just to reduce the amount of particulates that you're breathing, so it gives your lungs a break. The miscellaneous things like dust and fires, which can also be human-caused dust and fires, like from fuel plants. Then there's fuel combustion, and then industrial processes. And then finally, transportation is another one of those solid particulates, which is why in the United States, we have all these laws about making sure that if you are in a building where we park a lot of large vehicles, for example, like a firehouse, we have exhaust systems on those firehouse, on the gas pipes, for the tailpipes for the fire trucks and things. We will hook up the exhaust system so it vents it out. Sorry, I got tongue-tied there. Atmospheric pollution, basically we've already covered. Going through particulates. These are the solid aerosol particles that could be solid or liquid. They are not gas form, and they can go from being very, very small at 0.1 micrometers to 100 micrometers in size. Natural sources for particulates are things like fires, like forest fires, volcanic eruptions, salt spray from the ocean, and then pollen. And then the anthropogenic sources are things like burning of fossil fuels. And that's really the big one when it comes to human-caused particulates in the atmosphere. Even though these particles can be in the atmosphere for a good amount of time, a good rainstorm will drag them down to earth, which will give your body a little break, right? This is why kind of after a good rainstorm, sometimes the pollen doesn't get to your eyes and things if you're somebody who has a lot of allergies in there. Anything that is a particulate size of 10 micrometers can get into the lungs. And we associate these particulates as being a stimulant or an adjutant that can cause things like asthma. 2.5 are the incredibly dangerous, and these are the small particulates that can cause agitations in the lungs and cause things like lung cancer. And I already mentioned like miner's lung, black lung. Carbon oxides, like carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, is one of those scary materials. It is a colorless, odorless gas that can come naturally from volcanic eruptions, forest fires, and other processes. It's extremely toxic and dangerous to humans and animals, and obviously we can't breathe carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is not something that we filter well through our bodies. On the other hand, carbon dioxide we can kind of filter a little better, but once again, it's incredibly dangerous to living things. We can't have a huge percentage of carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. It will suffocate us, right? Carbon dioxide is incredibly scary because it also contributes as a greenhouse gas, meaning that it absorbs heat energy, light energy, and transmits it back as heat, holding heat in, which can increase temperatures in a region. Just looking at some of the different parts per million, these are ppms. This is if I took 1 million particles of atmosphere and I measured out how many of them were a certain type. If out of those particles I get 50, this is what we consider the maximum allowable occupational safety and health administration dose for 8 hours of exposure. If I was to measure it out and get 200 particles of carbon monoxide within my little 1 million particles that I'm measuring, I can expect headaches, fatigue, dizziness, and nausea within 2 to 3 hours. If I have 400, it creates the headaches and becomes life-threatening after 3 hours' time. At 800, you will see dizziness, nausea, even convulsions of the body within 45 minutes. And if I don't get you out of there, it can cause death within 2 to 3 hours as you slowly suffocate. 1,600, headaches, dizziness, nausea within 20 minutes, death within 1 hour, and so on and so forth. You get the picture. Carbon monoxide, very bad. We can't breathe it. It will suffocate us. If there is high amounts of carbon monoxide, you can't be there. It's incredibly highly dangerous, which is why you hear of those very scary stories where people did something silly during a storm, where they lost power and they went to go start a generator, but they left the generator in the garage because it was raining, and they ended up poisoning themselves and their families with carbon monoxide. So when you are playing with a fossil fuel, which will produce carbon monoxide, make sure that you have proper ventilation so